Hello, I'm Professor Sims, and this presentation is about the impacts of alternative teaching modalities on microbiology laboratory student outcomes since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Fundamentals of Microbiology Laboratory course is an undergraduate level laboratory class where students can learn a variety of microbiological techniques, skills, and concepts. Topics include traditional microbiology, biochemical testing, molecular techniques, aseptic technique, manipulation and observation of microorganisms. Students get to generate data, they learn to analyze their data, draw conclusions, and also communicate scientific data to others. Additionally, the curriculum is designed to help students develop listening skills, writing skills, and it's also a pretty heavy discussion type class. When the COVID-19 lockdowns began in the middle of the spring 2020 semester, educators across the world had to move all of their face-to-face instruction to an emergency remote learning platform. Everything had to be moved online. Everyone had to learn how to use Zoom. This emergency modality, it was not necessarily comparable to like a fully developed online course. Developing a course usually takes something like 3 to 6 months. My fully developed online micro labs weren't ready to be delivered to students until the summer of 2020. And then that was the sole modality that was available to students until I was able to develop the hybrid course. And that was completed in August of 2021. And one of the reasons it took so long was just not only did we have to retool the delivery aspects of the course, we also had to have the facility ready to go. So when we're looking at the aspects affecting student outcomes, it is important to keep this timeline in mind. Now that the COVID-19 surges are subsiding, some students are still hesitant to return to campus, and there's many reasons for this. Some of them are related to COVID safety concerns. Some have children that aren't vaccinated. They have grandparents that live with them. Some are bothered by the need for mask mandates or don't believe there is a need for mask mandates. People are very divided on that subject. A lot of our students come from out of town, an hour, 2 hours away, and it's been proven to them now that the commute really isn't necessary in all cases. Students like the flexibility. They've reported a better work, home, and school balance. And students enjoyed being able to learn more about how they, in fact, learn. Online modalities kind of force students into obtaining the knowledge from the resources provided rather than, being a passive listener in a lecture, right? So it is important for educators to investigate the impacts that alternative teaching methods like online and hybrid modalities, how do these affect student outcomes? Also, we must consider what the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us about the ways in which teaching and learning goals can be and need to be supported in an online learning environment. The course level student learning outcomes for the Fundamentals of Microbiology Laboratory are: 1, become competent in the application of bright field microscopy; 2, become competent in the practice of cultivating microorganisms; 3, analyze the biochemical properties of microorganisms; and 4, evaluate control methods for microbial growth. The first student learning outcome is assessed using several multiple choice questions on the midterm exam. The second SLO is assessed using guided questions that are included in the templates for the first lab report. The third SLO is measured using multiple choice questions that are on the final exam. And then the fourth SLO is measured using guided questions that appear on the template for the semester project report at the end of the semester. Additionally, overall grade averages and DFW rates were used to assess student outcomes. Overall, the study included a total of 459 students from 28 sections of Biology 2325L, the microlab. And as you saw earlier, the timeline spanned from 2019 to the present. Scores for each outcome were grouped based on modality, and then they were compared to each other. Now, the spring 2020 semester was technically a hybrid course. Before March 2020, it was a face-to-face class. And then after that, after the lockdowns began, it became a fully online class. But I considered, in my statistical analysis, which I'll talk about in a minute, I considered them as a separate group because that wasn't really a hybrid course. It wasn't a fully developed online or hybrid situation at all. It was an abrupt mid-semester shift where the changes to the course were made on the fly instead of by design. So we considered that group individually. The statistical analysis consisted of one-way ANOVA comparison tests. The assessment scores and grade averages were compared based on their grouping. That is, face-to-face was compared to online, which was compared to hybrid, which was compared to face-to-face. Results were considered to be significant when the value for P being the probability that the numbers arrived just by chance. So it was significant if P was less than 0.05. So here are some results. The mean scores for each student learning outcome and overall grade average for each modality are shown here in this graph. All of the student learning outcomes met the benchmark for a 2000 level science course, which is 75% or higher. The mean scores for SLOs number 1 here, 3, and 4 were all highest for the hybrid modality. Interestingly, the highest scores for SLO number 2 belong to students attending the spring 2020 semester. Another surprise was that the lowest scores occurred before the pandemic among the face-to-face students, and that's for all of the SLOs and for the overall grade average as well. So it appears that the switch from traditional face-to-face micro labs to online and or hybrid labs did not have a negative impact on student outcomes like we might have expected. In fact, the opposite seems to be true. But to really know, we needed to look at the statistical test. Results of the one-way ANOVA test are shown in this table here, and it also listed the modalities with the lowest and highest scores for each of the outcomes and the grade average. Significant differences for SLOs 1 through 3 are highlighted in these little blue boxes here. We did not see any significant differences between modalities for SLO number 4 or for overall grade average. Grade distributions and the DFW rates for students attending each of the 4 modalities are shown in this figure. This rising blue trend line that you see here, it's showing that there was a statistically significant increase in the number of A's from 2019 to 2022. Interestingly, the lowest percentage of A grades was observed for the face-to-face classes, those that were held before the pandemic. Alternatively, the highest percentage of A grades was observed for students in the hybrid classes that started in fall 2021. The DFW rates were also the worst for the face-to-face classes, but what we don't have here is a significant difference. So this flat trend line here at the top is indicating that the differences in DFW rates were not significant, not statistically significant, based on their modality. So the data indicates that student outcomes for the Biology 2325L micro labs were highest when the course was delivered in a hybrid mixed modality rather than when it was delivered in either an all face-to-face modality or all online. Looking into the literature, it shows that pedagogically sound class time rather than modality leads to increased student outcomes. Also, synchronous face-to-face classes may not be the most effective way to teach every class. Asynchronous online modalities allow students to move at their own pace, which is likely a major reason that online course offerings were on the rise even before the pandemic. However, online courses are not without their problems. For example, digital inequities, that is, unequal access to computers and internet access, among students were elucidated during the pandemic, as were the needs for student autonomy and access to support networks. The hybrid microlab course appears to have provided the, quote, best of both worlds in that it included both synchronous and asynchronous instruction. Students had access to campus computers and internet if they needed them. Student support came in the form of face-to-face and online access to instructors, as well as campus resources like the Learning Resource Center, faculty advisors, tutors, etc. Among many, many other things, the COVID-19 pandemic helped to shed light on the need for educators to adjust to disruptions in their existing lesson plans. Future disruptions may include not only pandemics, but also such things as natural disasters and climate crises. The process of changing a course's modality involves a lot more than simply uploading course materials to the internet. We must consider how modality affects how a course is paced, what the appropriate student-to-teacher ratios should be, what the mechanisms of communication are between the students and the teachers, what is the quality of that communication, what kind of assessment tools are appropriate for this specific modality, what kind of needs do the students have as far as access to technology and educational resources. We need to keep in mind that educators need resources as well, such as adequate time to develop new course materials, administrative support, professional development opportunities, so like training and mentoring. We need to be sure that educators can be flexible enough to meet the needs of all of their students, whether they be face-to-face, online, or a mixture of both. So I want to thank you very much for listening to my talk, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.